I appreciate the privilege of being here with you this evening for this very special service of Maundy, Thursday. Our second oldest grandson took his first communion tonight at the earlier service. Doesn't get much better than that. So it's just a lovely, lovely worship service to be a part of. Somewhere in my work as a pastor of the church, I came to the realization that Maundy Thursday is my favorite service out of the whole year. I like Ash Wednesday a lot, but Maundy Thursday is just this very special time for me personally. One, to be able to celebrate Holy Communion regularly for people for the first time, but then also to be able to share in a meal with the community as we draw close to Lent and move into the 3 days of Easter, as we move to Good Friday and Saturday and Sunday. So, let's talk about food. As you can tell by looking at me, you can tell that I've not missed too many meals and that I'm pretty serious about food. I'm 65 years and about 4 months. I did math before I got here tonight, and conservatively, I've eaten somewhere north of 71,000 meals in my life. Give or take. I mean, there were a couple days where I didn't have 3 meals, but we made up for it because there were a couple days where we had 4 or 5. But if you sat me down and said, well, what was your favorite meal, or how many can you remember? Can you tell us where you ate and what the food was and who was there? Truth be told, I'd have to say most of the time I don't remember. I mean, if it's not Papa Murphy's Tuesday, I can almost always tell you there's pizza at the Zellmer house, and there's almost always Papa's favorite. They named it after me. You know, I know you're surprised to hear that, but it's true. My wife and I both love that, and if the grandkids show up, they like it too. Works out perfect. But if you really were serious about it and you wanted to know, well, what meals were important and what would stick out about them, there would be some things that came front and center. They were important days. I do remember the first time I took my wife out, back when we were dating. I certainly remember the Christmas when we came home with the very first grandchild on both sides of the family. And I remember the meal that we shared. I know what Mom cooked. I know where my parents sat. I knew both the table linen, the china. I know it was still there. If I think about it for just a little bit, I can smell the food, right? I mean, we've got those moments. Well, it was true for the disciples too. They'd had all kinds of meals before this evening. And they had grown up in a community where for more than 1,000 years, now hear that, for more than 1,000 years, they had been celebrating the Passover meal. If you wanted to know what the central piece was for the Jewish community, it would be that meal. Those men and women that were in that upper room, gathered around the table, sitting up against the walls, they had been doing that meal since they were babies in arms. I would be willing to bet all of my money if we could actually talk to them, none of them had ever skipped one of those Passovers. It was part and parcel of being a Jew. They had it all memorized. Nobody needed a book, right? They knew how to prepare the food. They knew how to make the arrangements. They had started borrowing a piece from the Romans. We know that because of the way they were sitting. They didn't actually sit at the table. They reclined, which is how Jesus could get at their feet. Well, they've had the meal, or parts of it, and then Jesus does this incredibly strange thing. He gets up, takes off his outer garment, and he goes and pours water into a basin, gets a towel, puts it around his feet, and he begins to wash the disciples' feet. Now, the part that you and I just don't get emotionally is, first and foremost, we don't have slaves today. I mean, some of us had children so they could mow the lawn. My dad told me that more than once. But we really don't have slaves. And we don't live in a world where everyone walked, whether you're the king or the poorest person. Everybody walked. And the streets were dusty. And so when you got to where you were going, if you were a good host, there was a basin and a towel, and you sat down, took your sandals off, washed your feet. And then you were ready to get into the dining room or into the house. Well, for whatever reason, that has not happened. So here, the one who's the teacher, the rabbi, the one that's the most important, is doing what was only done by the lowest of slaves. If you were a free person, you didn't do this. In fact, if you were a slave of import, you didn't do this. So to have their teacher is, they don't know what's going on. I'm telling you. And it's already been a bad week. It started out so great, except there was just huge miscommunication. The crowd that welcomes Jesus into Jerusalem is as clear as they can be by the greeting they give him. We know you're the king we've been waiting for. If you wink or nod or just say it, we're ready to go to war. The swords are sharpened. The spears are made ready. We will destroy the Romans that are here. All you got to do is ask. And Jesus is clear as he can be, from the animal that he rides to how he is dressed, that he's telling them he's not coming for war. He's coming for peace. And now the days have unfolded, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And day by day, he's gone to the temple, he's done his teaching, and it's gotten worse and worse every single day. And now it's Passover. And the disciples come to this meal knowing that there are people that want to kill their teacher. They know it. They're not gathering around a meal that's life-giving and enriching. They're gathering as people that are scared to death. And then their teacher does this incredible thing. And Peter doesn't want any part of it, just doesn't want it. You can't be doing that. And there's this lovely dialogue between Jesus and Peter. Well, if I don't wash your feet, you're out. And then, of course, Peter can't help himself. It's just diving off the end of the, into the deep end. Well, then give me a bath. And at this point, I always love Jesus' answer, because he's thinking, I got to get better disciples. I'm starting over. So you should know I've always just shot for being right at Simon Peter's level of discipleship. If I know there's times that Jesus just goes, oh, David, really, dude. But we're not done. Because he takes that meal that they know in their bones, right? This is a meal that was them. And he does this most amazing thing. He takes that meal that is the Jewish meal, and he makes it his own. And he makes it about himself. There are 4 cups in the Seder meal, and the last one is pretty much the close of the meal. And he takes that cup, and he invites them to drink after he's blessed it. And they would have all known the blessing. And then after they've all consumed the wine that was in the cup, he looks at them and says, you just drank my blood. And again, it's kind of icky, right? But for a Jew, they were incredibly careful about blood. They liked meat just like we do, but the one part that they never, ever ate from an animal was the blood. It was very carefully drained, collected, blessed, and disposed of in a holy way. You just did not do it. And to drink blood, to eat blood, was in fact an abomination. It meant you were outside the community. They're out. They've done a sinful thing. And what is their teacher doing? First, he washes our feet. Then he tells us we're drinking his blood. Now he dismisses Judas. We now know that there's a betrayer right in our midst. Well, for them, the evening's not even gotten to the worst part. Because within just a few hours, they will betray him as well. They will each run away into the dark. Peter will deny him 3 times. That's all in front of them. For me, when I look at this night, it is, I think, the epitome of what it means to follow Jesus. We can get it so incredibly wrong. I mean, we can be as broken as the disciples gathered round that table. And Jesus doesn't give up on them or us. It's only after they've gone through the next 3 days. And it's only when they look back on that evening does the gift become apparent. And the words begin to mean something altogether again. And now it's this life-giving memory given and shed for you. This is my body. This is my blood. I promise that I will be with you in these 2 gifts. I think of all the times that I've celebrated Holy Communion or where I've been invited to receive. And what it's meant to me as I've walked through my decades, what it's meant to the communities that I've been cared for and been a part of, what it's meant to my family as we have gathered in hospital rooms at graveside, at times of celebration. Because those meals that matter are the ones that sustain us. I haven't been at the farm for 53 years. 53 years. And I can tell you what our last meal was like there. Of how my grandfather smelled and where all the food was and the prayer that was said and the people that were gathered there. And I remember going to church that Thanksgiving weekend and to celebrate and be a part of Holy Communion because I got to go, not for the first time, but pretty close. And to sit between 2 grandparents that were in transition, moving from the farm to town. 53 years ago. I can tell you all about it. I can tell you all about the time that we've celebrated Holy Communion at a Bible camp or out into the wilds of Africa or in Canada or all the places that the people of God gather. This evening we have people that are going to celebrate their very first Holy Communion. And I hope and pray that it is as much as a gift to them as it has been to me and the communities that I've been a part of. So God's blessings to each one of you as you hear the invitation and the promise that this gift is for you. It is for you. And it's there for your sins to be forgiven, for life to be renewed, and a promise to be poured into you. So God's blessings as you are the people of God. Amen.